My sister wrecked my business, and my parents blamed me for it. Let that sink in for a second. I wasn't some overnight success or influencer with startup money. I built everything from scratch. My bakery, my reputation, my sanity, but none of that mattered when Lana got involved. She blew it all up like it was her right. And somehow, I ended up the villain. Here's how it really happened. I'm Eva. I'm 30. And for most of my life, I've been invisible. Not in a tragic, nobody sees me way. I just learned early that quiet was easier. My younger sister, Lana, made sure of that. She was loud, dramatic, and somehow always the center of everything. The type of kid who cried over a C+ and got ice cream to cheer her up, while I got a pat on the back for straight A's and was told to be a good example. We grew up in Asheville, North Carolina. My parents, Miriam and Dennis, are what I'd call nice on the surface people. They smile a lot, host book clubs, always remember birthdays. But when it came to Lana, they folded like paper. She could crash the car, lie about it, and they'd blame the brakes. I once forgot to text that I got home safely after a field trip and got grounded for worrying everyone. I learned not to complain, not to push back. I got my first job at 16, saved every dime, and moved out at 19. Lana, on the other hand, flunked out of community college twice and still somehow got a brand new car for her effort. Fast forward. I'm 27, and after years of side hustles, I finally opened Brighton's Oven, a tiny corner bakery with hand-me-down equipment and thrifted furniture. I signed the lease with shaking hands and $8,000 in my business account. I worked 14-hour days, mixing dough at 5 a.m., frosting cupcakes until my wrists ached. My first employee was Josie, mid-30s, sarcastic, and brilliant in the kitchen. She kept things light when I was burning out, and we built something real together. The locals started coming in for the sourdough, but they stayed for the vibes. We had regulars. We had community. It was happy. Lana visited once, maybe twice in that first year. She took selfies and told me to add more vegan options because they're trendy. That was the extent of her contribution. Then came year 2. I was doing okay, not rich, but stable. Bookings for birthday cakes, early morning lines for croissants, and a local magazine even did a little write-up on me. That's when Lana suddenly got interested. She called me out of the blue. I still remember it. I was elbow deep in cookie dough, and my phone buzzed with her name. Eva, I've been thinking about your bakery. Like maybe I could help you grow it. Do some branding stuff, I blinked. Branding? Yeah. I've been watching all these TikToks about business scaling. I think we could go viral if you let me run the social media. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no. But then came the kicker. Mom and Dad think it's a great idea too. They said maybe I could learn responsibility through your business. There it was. The golden child loop. Mess up, find a new playground, leave others to deal with the fallout. I didn't say yes that day. But I didn't say no either. I told her we could talk. And suddenly, the pressure rolled in. Miriam called 2 days later, all smiles. Eva, it would mean so much if you gave Lana a chance. She's really trying this time. Dennis chimed in over speaker. She just needs structure. And you're so good at that. You know that moment when you feel your spine straighten because you know what's happening, but you feel too guilty to stop it? That was me. I was the responsible one, and that meant bending again, so I gave her a trial week. Just a week. She'd help with the Instagram account and shadow me during the rush hours. It took 2 days for things to go sideways. She walked in late, iced coffee in hand, sunglasses on like she was arriving at a fashion shoot. Josie gave me a look. I gave her a don't start shake of the head. Ugh, it's hot in here, Lana said. Do you not have central air? This is a kitchen, I said. Ovens make it hot. Right. Anyway, I had a cool idea. What if we make a series called Broke Girl Bakery where I try making stuff and probably fail? I blinked. Are you making fun of me? No, it's self-deprecating. It's a thing. I tried to stay calm. I told her to focus on learning the basics. Register, cleaning, helping Josie with prep. She rolled her eyes, pulled out her phone, and filmed herself wiping down a counter while dancing. Day 3, she invited 3 of her friends in and gave them free cupcakes. Didn't ask, just handed them out. I pulled her aside and said, hey, those are for sale. You can't just... They're influencers, Eva. Relax. This is called exposure. But we're not some brand with inventory to burn. I need to sell those, she shrugged. It's just cupcakes. That line stuck with me, like none of it mattered. The early mornings, the budgeting, the flour burns on my arms. Just cupcakes. By the end of the week, Josie was barely speaking to her. Sales dipped because regulars didn't appreciate being filmed while they ate. We had to refund a custom cake order because Lana promised a red velvet rose swirl we don't even make. I called a family meeting. That's how serious it got. I sat my parents down with Lana and explained everything. The freebies, the disruptions, the mess. And Miriam said, "Maybe you're just not used to managing creative energy." Dennis added, "Lana's trying to help. Don't punish her for not being like you." I left that night more furious than I've ever been. The next Monday, Lana showed up again. I hadn't invited her. She walked behind the counter like she owned the place and said, "So I've been thinking, what if we add a Lana's Pick shelf with fun flavors I come up with?" And just like that, I realized she was never going to respect it because she didn't build it, because she didn't have to, and no one in my family was going to stop her. So I did. You know that feeling when you're watching something fall apart? And everyone around you acts like it's fine? That was my life, every single day, after I let Lana into my bakery. She wasn't just bad at the job, she was chaos in lip gloss and leggings. And the worst part, she thought she was helping. After the Lana's Picks shelf idea, I told her firmly, no new menu items without approval. She pouted, called me controlling, then went behind my back and added them anyway. I came in early one morning to find the display case stocked with neon pink donuts that looked like melted pool toys. She'd labeled them unicorn glaze bombs and posted a reel that already had 2,000 views. "People love them," she said proudly. "Did you even test the recipe?" She shrugged. "It's just boxed mix with strawberry syrup. They taste fine." They didn't. They were raw in the middle and made 3 kids sick before noon. We had to throw out the entire batch. Josie was livid. She took one bite, spit it in the trash, and said, "I swear if she touches one more batch of dough, I'm quitting." I begged her to stay. I promised it was temporary. But I was lying. To her and to myself. A week later, Lana started letting her friends come in after hours to hang out. I found dirty plates in the sink, half-empty wine bottles in the trash, and a video on her Instagram of them dancing on the prep table in my kitchen. That was the night I changed the locks. She showed up the next morning, furious. "You locked me out?" "It's not your house. It's my business. Our business," she snapped. "Mom and Dad said..." I cut her off. "Mom and Dad don't pay the rent here. I do." She stormed out. That afternoon, I got a long text from my mom. "Eva, locking her out was cruel. She was trying to bond with you. Can't you just meet her halfway?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too busy reviewing our financials, and that's when I saw it. There were cash register discrepancies. Small at first, $20 here, $35 there. Then, bigger, $180 missing from a Saturday shift. Lana worked alone. Another $300 gone during a catering pickup she handled as a favor. I checked the cameras. She wasn't stealing, not directly. She was handing out free pastries, free drinks, comping people who didn't ask, all under the excuse of promo content or building the brand. I confronted her with printouts. She flipped it back on me. "I thought you trusted me. Wow. I trusted you not to rob me blind." "You're so dramatic. It's just snacks." "You gave away almost $1,000 in 2 weeks." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I'm trying to ruin your bakery?" And right then I realized she didn't care what happened to the bakery because it wasn't hers, because she never had anything to lose. Then came the catering disaster. It was a huge order. 200 cookies, 10 pies, 8 custom cakes for a wedding at a vineyard just outside Asheville. We'd worked on it for weeks. Josie planned the timeline down to the minute. The night before the delivery, I had a migraine and went home early. Lana offered to oversee things for me. I should have known better. She changed the order, replaced 3 cakes with trendier designs she saw online, added her own frosting style, and gave the delivery guy the wrong pickup time. He showed up late. They were missing items, and the ones that arrived didn't match the order. The bride called me in tears. The wedding coordinator demanded a partial refund. I couldn't breathe. I got to the bakery and found Lana casually eating one of the extra pies. "What?" "I thought they'd like the new look." "They didn't ask for new. They asked for what we promised." She rolled her eyes. "Some people just don't get creativity." I asked her to leave. She laughed. You're overreacting again. No, I'm done reacting. I'm telling you, you're out. Her smile faded. You can't fire me. We're family. Watch me. That night, my parents came to my apartment. My mom sat on the couch like someone had died. My dad crossed his arms and said, You're really going to throw your sister out of your business over a few mistakes? I told them everything. The money, the late nights, the catering mess, they barely blinked. She's just trying to grow. She looks up to you. Then why does she keep burning everything I build? My mom said, You're so stubborn, Eva. Can't you just forgive her? I looked at them both. For once, I didn't cry. I just said no. The next week, Lana posted a long, tear-filled video online. Said she'd been pushed out of her dream by a jealous sister. Said she tried to help and got punished for it. Her friends flooded my business account with 1-star reviews. One called me a bitter hag who can't share success. We lost 2 clients and had a slow week. But something else happened too. Josie came in with 2 fresh loaves of bread and said, Still here, still baking. Let's rebuild. So I did, but not quietly and not kindly. It was time Lana learned what real consequences looked like. The moment I told Lana she had to leave, something inside me changed. It wasn't drama or revenge at first. It was a quiet turning, a click that said, This ends now. For years, I had been the person who smoothed things over, who took the blame so the house would stay calm. That night, I decided I wasn't going to be the doormat anymore. I was done letting other people set my life on fire and expect me to stand in the smoke. She left the bakery that night like she'd expected a fight and didn't get one. No yelling, no slamming doors, just a small, sharp sentence. Fine, I'll go. And then the sound of her heels on the pavement. I remember watching her walk away and feeling, for the first time, both terrified and relieved. Terrified because I knew what family drama felt like on the other end. Relieved because the chaos that had been a slow leak could finally be fixed. The next morning, I had to face the mess. Josie came in early, looked at the empty display case, and didn't say, I told you so. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. We scrubbed counters until our hands stung. We threw away frosting that had been touched by midnight parties and made a fresh schedule for the week. Cleaning felt like the opposite of giving up. It was the first active thing I did to take back control. Then came the numbers. I sat in the back office with my laptop and the ledger, fingers numb from the cold of the AC and from the slow, sinking realization that what looked like little losses weren't little at all. They added up. Missing cash, comped orders, a string of discounts that never had approval. I printed everything out and taped it to the wall like evidence in a case. It looked ugly, like a crime scene. Maybe it was. I called my bank. Not because I wanted drama, but because there was now a real possibility this was bigger than me and Josie. That Lana might have leaned on the family accounts to cover her own gaps. I remembered a few odd things. A check my mom had given her for rent help that never got cashed. A shared family card transaction that didn't make sense. I asked the bank for account statements. They sent PDFs with cheerful headers, and then I sat and read until the words blurred. There it was. Transactions that didn't belong to bakery supplies, gas purchases in another state, a payment to a boutique I'd never heard of, dozens of small cash withdrawals over weekends. When I compared dates to the days she'd been at the bakery, patterns showed up. It didn't look like simple generosity. It looked deliberate. I called my mom and asked, gentle at first, then firmer when she tried to charm me into a different mood. Did you ever give Lana access to our joint account? I asked. She hesitated in a way that told me everything I needed to know. I thought she needed help once, she said finally. I just transferred a small amount. Small enough to be plausible. Big enough in the end to matter. It felt awful to confront them. My parents needed to be protected from their own blind spots too. They hadn't meant harm. They'd meant to help. But help turned to habit and habit to enabling. Conversations with Miriam and Dennis had always been soft and full of excuses, and now I was asking them to see what they hadn't wanted to see for years. That love doesn't excuse theft. I told them, calmly but clearly, that I had evidence and I planned to report the fraud. I expected a meltdown. Instead, Miriam's first response was disbelief, and Dennis went quiet like he was recalculating something. Eventually, under pressure, they admitted that Lana had sometimes asked for the family card to cover an emergency. They hadn't looked closely. They hadn't asked questions. They'd given. That made them part of the problem. Putting the pieces together, I realized Lana had been covering up more elaborate holes in her life for a long time. She'd pulled money from the family pool. She'd leaned on the bakery's goodwill to pay for rent and nights out. She'd burned bridges and then come home expecting bandages. I felt a hot, personal betrayal. Not just because she'd hurt me and my business, but because she'd used our family's kindness as a crutch for her recklessness. I pulled Josie into the office and told her I was going to take action. She didn't blink. "Finally," she said. "You can't just patch this with forgiveness anymore. We decided on steps. First, freeze anything connected to the bakery that Lana might still touch. Accounts, vendor portals, keys. I changed locks again, and this time I personally handed the new keys only to employees I trusted. Second, I notified the payment processor and my bank about suspicious transactions. They advised I file a fraud report and consider the help of a lawyer. I made the phone calls and hearing the formal language, investigation, evidence, case number, made it real in a way my anger had not. It was no longer just family drama. It was wrongdoing with consequences. I thought about the confrontation I'd have with Lana when she realized I'd moved on this. I reheated the scene in my head 100 ways. Would she confess, deny, cry, try to charm me back? None of those options mattered as much as the truth that I had to protect my livelihood and the people who worked for me. I couldn't keep pretending the bakery was safer than it was. When I told my parents what I'd done, that I'd reported unauthorized activity and was involving legal counsel, the house hung heavy with silence. Miriam's eyes filled with tears that were not the apologetic kind, but the shocked kind. Dennis paced and asked how much of our family savings had been affected. Neither of them said, "You were right to act." Neither of them was ready to be the adult they'd never been. Lana's reaction was exactly as messy as I'd feared. When she found out the accounts were frozen and that there was a police report, she called me and screamed. She called me every name she could find. She accused me of ruining her life. She accused me of trying to make her homeless. She said my control issues were why she did what she did, because I'd always been controlling and now I'd finally cracked. Her words stung, but they did not stop me. I'd seen her behavior too many times to be surprised by any fantasy she cooked up to defend herself. When the detective called to schedule a statement, I read my notes. I said the dates, the amounts, the patterns. I gave the copies of receipts and the videos of her handing out free pastries. It felt strange to talk about family to someone who had no tie to my heart. It felt stranger to place a legal process on top of a heartbreak. The legal steps took weeks. The investigator was kind but thorough, asking questions I sometimes didn't want to answer. They needed to know motive, access, and impact. It was exhausting. In court, family dysfunction is a set of facts. I learned that truth can be cold and clear, and sometimes that's what you need to cut through lies. As news of the fraud spread, from the bank to a quiet word at the neighborhood market to the barista who'd seen Lana's posts, the social world she'd relied on started to crack. Friends who'd once cheered for her started to double-check their receipts. Vendors who'd extended her payment terms called and asked about balances. Her car got a late notice letter on the windshield. A repossession notice came the following month. It wasn't dramatic at first. It was slow and legal. Things you can't pay for stopped being available. The diet of favors and borrowed trust ran out. My parents reacted in stages. First denial, then anger at me for making it public, and finally the slow shame of understanding how their tolerance had enabled damage. Miriam started showing up at the bakery more often, at first to check on things, and later to help fold boxes or stamp receipts. She was clumsy and embarrassed, but she was present. Dennis, quieter, sat with me and spreadsheets in the office, learning to reconcile accounts the way I had learned. It wasn't instant grace, but I could see their guilt becoming a bridge instead of a wall. Lena, however, didn't learn gracefully. She wove a new story online about being the victim of a sister who hates her success. She tried to charm her way back into our circle by promising to get help and to repay what she'd taken. For a few weeks, I entertained the idea of a reconciliation, mostly because old habits die hard and because family still matters even when you're mad. But her promises were like the neon donuts, sweet, loud, and lacking substance. One night she came by the bakery unannounced, eyes red, voice high with the kind of panic that comes from being cornered. "Eva, I can pay you back. I'll get a job. I'll do anything." She reached for my hand, like she did when we were kids and I bandaged a scraped knee. I pulled away and felt the old guilt spike. For a second, I wondered if I was cruel. Then I looked at the ledger on the wall, at Josie needing a new batch of dough, at the regular who walked in and smiled like he'd come to the right place. I thought about the nights I'd spent keeping the lights on while she partied. I thought about the moment when a friend's trust had been replaced by a 1-star review because someone I loved chose selfishness. "I'm sorry," I said plain. "I want you to get help, but not here. Not like this. You have to make it right on your own." I handed her a list of local resources. I told her if she repaid the money, we could talk about any future contact, but there would be boundaries and no more freeloading. She left saying she understood, but 2 weeks later, she was in the same pattern, flirting with someone new who paid her way, posting curated recovery photos, and borrowing again. Nothing stuck, so I kept doing the work. I rebooked clients who'd been burned. I rebuilt relationships with vendors. I tightened our internal accounting so that one person couldn't take advantage again. I even started weekly meetings where Josie and I reviewed numbers and schedules together. The bakery slowly healed. People began to trust us again. Regulars returned. New customers came because they liked our resilience as much as our bread. The family, though, never fully healed. Miriam and Dennis did start to change. They learned to ask questions before handing over money. That hurt them to do. It meant admitting mistakes. But the moment that felt the most like victory was small. One evening, my mom baked a batch of cinnamon rolls and brought them in unannounced. She stood in the back, nervous, then handed them to Josie and said, "I want to help. I want to be useful." It wasn't the apology I wanted. It wasn't a reset of the past. It was something quieter, a promise that we wouldn't let the same pattern repeat. Lana? She drifted. She bounced from job to job, charmed a new crowd, and sometimes posted about finding herself. She still expected family help sometimes, and sometimes she got it, but the sense that she could break us and walk away with no consequences was gone. In the end, I learned the hard way that cleaning house isn't only about removing someone who hurts you. It's about changing systems, setting boundaries, and being willing to look at your parents and say, "You have a role in this too." It's about making real, sometimes painful choices so that the people who show up for you, not just the ones who claim it, can keep doing so. When the dust settled, the bakery was smaller than it might have been if Lana had never touched it. But it was steadier. My hands smelled of flour and hard work again. And for the first time in a long time, I slept through the night without thinking, what else is she going to break? Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, share, and subscribe for more content. If you want to share your stories, please comment below. Additionally, what is your opinion on the poster's decision?